Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 363. Today is Thursday, October 31st. Thursday, October 30th. We're not there yet. And I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. We've had Manosphere Monday. We've had Hurricane Tuesday. Yesterday was a hump day on Wednesday. And this is going to be Thoughtful Thursday. And we got a great show coming up. Colonel Alex Vindman is back on Independent Americans. But also happening today, Hurricane Melissa has hit Jamaica and the Caribbean hard. Trump and Hegseth have hit another boat off of Venezuela about 15 hours ago. The shutdown continues. Troops are worried about getting paid, and that's not getting enough attention anywhere except on this show. World Series Game 5. Toronto won a big one, 6-1. They take a commanding lead back to Toronto, 3-2. They could wrap it up in the next game. Trump is coming back from Asia in what he's calling a deal with what he's calling a deal. There was a North Korean missile. Putin is saber rattling again. Halloween is just one day away. And with all this scary stuff happening around the world, we're going to give you tricks and treats. And now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. And helping us stay vigilant is one of my favorite thought leaders in America, a conscience for our country. I think a true American hero and a patriot. One of the smartest guys we've had on this show, who's at the intersection of everything we like to talk about in terms of national security, global affairs, military policy, domestic concerns. He has been a very brave voice in challenging the powers that be over the last few years. He is a true patriot. Maybe somebody you could be for Halloween if you're Larry David or someone else. Rejoining us on the show, the great and powerful Colonel and Dr. Alex Vindman is back on Independent Americans. Welcome back, Colonel and Doctor now, right? I should call you Colonel Doctor? Which one takes priority?
I think Colonel takes priority over Doctor, according to the military, but, you know, that may be self-serving. Hey, Paul, it's awesome to be back with you. You've got a powerful voice. I can't keep up with your, really kind words and accolades. Just thanks for having me on. And, you're doing awesome work trying to figure out how to thread the needle and access kind of the big center of the country. Even though we have a two-party system and we've discussed that that's a challenge, but I applaud your efforts to do that and look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. We're going to get into Venezuela. We're going to get into North Korea. We're going to get into Putin. We're going to get into the domestic deployments, how the shutdown is impacting our military. You're going to give us our one good thing at the end of the show. But I want to start by asking you what I ask everybody. Colonel, where are you in America today, and how are you?
I'm in South Florida. That's where I what I call home year round. I've had a couple of weeks off of travel, which is awesome. I'm on the road pretty regularly, just trying to connect with Americans across the country. Next week, I'm going to be in Wisconsin. I'll be in Seattle, and I'll be in Idaho for 3 legs in one week, trying to connect again with Americans and explain some of the difficult challenges we have going on. But yeah, it's beautiful weather out there. I've got my doors open, screens up, and enjoying the nice weather down here.
Right on. You're a national security expert, which means you're an intelligence expert, which means you're kind of a cultural expert. So I want to get to our top topics and others, but I want to ask you, as you're traveling around the country, which is almost like many countries in one, right? You're going from South Florida to Idaho. What are you feeling? What are you seeing? If you were going to report back to, a president from another planet and say, hey, here's my strategic assessment of where America is, where the people of America are. You meet folks from all different parties, especially because you come from the military. What's your assessment of where America is right now?
That's a really interesting question, and framing it that way, kind of putting on a intel hat, makes me probably kind of provide a more sober, analytical view, rather than maybe a little bit of cheerleading that I sometimes find myself doing, which with some rose-colored glasses. I would say this. I think the the general trend lines are towards tribalism and partisanship. And the question is there more that unites us than divides us in this country right now? And I think that's unclear. I would say that my analytical consideration is that I think there's still a lot more that unites us as Americans. You know, that like when you start to go down to the community level, to the family level, I think we're all patriotic Americans. You know, fundamentally, even though it seems a little bit unclear at times because the tribalism gets in the way, you know, we believe in this singular kind of exceptional America. We believe in the values of America. You know that our country is a melting pot with immigrants. You know, whether we could all kind of take pride in our own family's immigrant story coming back. These things still unite us. I wonder if some of those values are starting to get eroded, that, you know, we should be working towards the common American good. Ask, you know, the refrain of ask not what your country could do for you, but what you could do for your country. That seems to be a little bit kind of watered down a little bit. So I can't be definitive about this one. I still think that the general sense is that there's more that unites us than divides us, despite a lot of these things that go on. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about this inequality with between the haves and the have-nots. That's going to become really, really stark. You know, this month, with millions of people losing access to their SNAP benefits, millions of people, including the military, not getting paid because of the government shutdown, and the fact that the House has not been in session, you know, for many, many weeks at this point. And I'm concerned. So, as an outside observer talking to, you know, an alien ruler, you know, we look kind of distracted and weak and vulnerable, and you know, our adversaries are certainly noting that and potentially exploiting it.
I share your assessment, and I want to build on that as we go into this show, because I think that commonality does exist, but right now too many forces are exploiting the divisions rather than the commonalities, and especially leaders are often too often incentivized to exploit those differences than to bring us together, and I think the national security piece is always most important. So let's pivot off of that with today's top topic. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention to our top topic. It's the thing that I think is most important here today on Thursday, October 31st. And it is that I think we are not safer. We are less safe. We are Trump to the world right now. As Trump goes around Asia, he looks unstable. He looks dictatorial. He looks out of touch even with his own country that seems divided and facing a shutdown. He's very extreme in his views. The military and his political situation is very disrupted. And I think the world is very unstable, and we are not safer. So we've got a situation now, Alex, where, you know, Putin is saber rattling. Trump's in China, and I think Putin's, you know, rattling the saber, saying, "Hey, don't forget about me. I'm over here too." China is the biggest chessboard piece, I think, in the world right now. North Korea is shooting off missiles, but simultaneously, we have a purge led by Hegseth at the Pentagon that's driving good people out, that's narrowing the military. We're not paying our troops. Our troops are being politicized by being sent into the streets. And now we've got potential flashpoints like the election here in New York next week, where if Mamdani wins, half the city is going to be pissed off. If he loses, half the city is going to be pissed off. And Trump is going to be hovering over all of that and threatening to send troops into Venezuela and invoke the Insurrection Act. My big headline is we are not safer, and we're getting less safe by the day, and I think our enemies are celebrating. What's your assessment, sir?
Yeah. So you covered a lot of ground there. I think you mentioned something that's really important about how our political system works. I want to at least briefly touch on it. It's the fact that you basically have now Trump, and is masterful about this, but the Republicans catering to their vocal minorities, the folks that show up, the hardcore kind of MAGA, that are sufficient to sway outcomes and, you know, deceive a small number of independents and middle of the roaders that are not paying attention. But that only works when you really have a system in which people aren't participating. If people are waking up to these dangers and you're doing a good job of kind of, laying this out and, putting it at the feet of the folks that are in charge and responsible, it doesn't work because the majority could easily swamp this. But right now the play is to a vocal minority, and Trump is masterful at this. In terms of dangers, I mean, there's just a shitload of them, frankly. Look at the news right now. You've got Trump in China, claiming that he's got did a masterful deal with Xi, but frankly, I think that doesn't look to be the case. It looks like this was another taco scenario. He overreached with regards to tariffs. He escalated the rhetoric around the fact that, heavier tariffs are going to go into place on November 1st. He really created a situation in which China was cutting off our farmers from their markets. He created a situation in which the Chinese did the latest kind of round of escalation by cutting us off from rare earths in response to their concerns over us cutting them off from chips and things of that nature, which I think was a good policy. Export controls could be really important. But in the settlement here, Trump is giving ground. He's going to give Chinese access to technologies that are going to allow them to really kind of, in a way, leapfrog or really catch up aggressively. He's maybe undoing some of the damage he's done with regards to access for our farmers to the Chinese markets. But the Chinese have been notorious about saying one thing and then actually doing something else. Like, he did this deal before in his first go around, and the Chinese never followed through. So I want to say that, they're playing them hard, and that this is going to be amount to, the U.S. looking weak and buckling like we've done before when we massively increased tariffs in the spring, and Trump kind of, saw the consequence of that and pushed back. So he's making us
Can I ask you to explain for folks who don't know? Talk about what you mean when you say Trump tacoed.
Trump always chickens out is the acronym. And it really was something that kind of came around when he did tariffs, when he started doing these trade wars and tariffs against China the last go around. He's really been pretty weak. Let's say, think about, the way he interacts with Putin. He's been Putin's plaything. Putin knows exactly how to manipulate him. He'll call Trump the day before Trump is supposed to meet with Zelensky and get him to like back off on supporting Ukraine with tomahawks or with sanctions and things of that nature. Those are, some of the most notable examples of Trump backing off. And he does this particularly with folks that he's concerned about, scared, he doesn't want to like get into a fight in which he knows he doesn't have the fortitude to stand up to Putin or Xi. He'll at the same time try to be a bully against, small and medium states. That usually hasn't worked out in his favor either. They're not, Canada's not willing to be pushed around. Ukraine's not willing to be pushed around, but that's what I'm talking about, with regards to.
Can we pause on that for a second? And maybe, Chris, you could pop in a quick clip here of when Xi and Trump actually met, right? And they had this awkward handshake moment. And I want to drill down on that because I think it's a really revealing moment. He looked weak. He looked like a guy who was sucking up, who was kissing ass, who was trying to fill empty air. And Xi didn't say a word, just stone-faced, held his hand, just kind of waited, which is kind of the Chinese strategy, right? Just let him punch himself out. Let him wear himself out. We've got a multi-100-year strategy, and you're flailing over here. I think it was very revealing. That moment, the moment in Japan where he kind of got lost and got confused by the protocol. I mean, I think too often he talks tough, but to the world, he does look weak, and it looks like he's getting rolled again and again, right?
Most importantly, he looks weak to our strongest adversaries that will eat his lunch. And he looks inconsistent to our friends, which means that he's unreliable. So I think that's exactly right. That's an important visual. I mean, if you think about like the diplomatic engagements like that professionals engage in, with our adversaries, it might not be smiles and glad hands. You just do the obligatory kind of press spray. You stand there, say, we had a good meeting. Doesn't have to be smiles and giggles, but he wants to show that he's got good relationships with all these strongmen because he himself is pretty weak.
And you and you also, and Alex, you shut the fuck up, right? Like there's an
Yeah.
important point here, right? If you're
Yeah.
explaining, you're losing. And he
Yeah.
feels like a guy who's trying to over explain the situation because he does have a weaker hand. He's under pressure to come back with some kind of win. He hasn't solved the shutdown. He's going to say, hey, farmers, you're getting soybeans and we're getting minerals. But, the fact that we're negotiating with them over minerals, I think exposes our own vulnerability, right? Especially when it comes to defense related issues.
Yeah. Action should speak louder than words, and there's really too little action from the president in a lot of different corners, and he has to fill that up with kind of just noise and patting himself on the back. But
And
you
Alex,
mentioned
and one important one that I think is maybe get over, he didn't get TikTok solved, right?
yeah,
So doesn't that mean that TikTok basically still has access to infinite amounts of data and millions and tens of millions of hundreds of millions maybe of phones all across America, right? I think this is the part of TikTok
absolutely,
that gets lost, right?
yeah, absolutely. So I think the TikTok thing is a little bit different. I mean, the Chinese won't bend on this idea of servers in the U.S. They're prepared to let the whole thing kind of just be shut down in the U.S. It's one of a bunch of different companies, and it's an influence tool. They don't want to lose their influence tool, and Trump doesn't want to take the heat with regard. He doesn't have the fortitude to follow through on both congressional legislation and Supreme Court decisions that the law to basically get TikTok to shut down unless they take these actions needs to be carried out. And he's been doing these kind of deferrals for months now, and this is going to be an unsolved issue.
And can I just talk about that from a national security standpoint? Because I think people get it lost. Yeah, your kids want TikTok, right? Millions of people want TikTok, but the Chinese want TikTok open, right? They're going to keep that open as long as they can, right?
Yeah,
For any number of potentially nefarious reasons, if only because it can be distracting and divisive, and I would argue is not great for our society and our
yeah,
unity. But it's a massive programming channel,
yep.
right? That they're going to want to keep up and broadcasting and functioning until someone has the political courage to say, sorry, I'm shutting it down because it's a national security issue.
So that's really the crux of it. The issue is this: China has access to enormous amounts of data. Everything from like profiling the individual users, um, being able to use that data to kind of train its AIs to be able to then employ nefariously, maybe to conduct influence operations. But on a day-to-day basis, it's a powerful tool in which to direct the American public in a particular direction. They control an algorithm that'll be cheerleading for Trump one moment, at the next, highly divisive, attacking both the Republican and Democratic parties to paralyze us. Whatever the case, whatever they want, they could do through that algorithm. And it's pretty well established that they use this tool rather effectively with regards to elections. I wouldn't say that they're decisive yet, but certainly they're kind of the tone of support for Trump, attacking Harris in the previous administration. That's clear. There's a lot of data on that point. So
And the
that's what
door is open, right? The door is open, I think, is maybe most important. And so simultaneously, North Korea fires a missile. Putin is threatening to use, a nuke-based, a submarine-based nuke. What should people take away from those two components, right? Because I think you put them together, you see the axis of evil. You see how formidable they all are together, how they could potentially engage us and overwhelm us. But what those other two pieces that were happening on the split screen?
yeah.
What should folks take away from that?
There's an interesting movie I watched a couple of days ago, A House of Dynamite on Netflix, and the process was actually really quite good. They had good technical advisors that had that they consulted on the process. The decisions, being a little bit fast and loose with the fact that like one of the 4 stars there is talking about happily employing nuclear weapons, or the president would go down this direction. That's less important, but it's pretty insightful that this was a threat from North Korea. What I would tell you is that fundamentally the doctrine of a mutually assured destruction holds. There is no room for the Russians to be adventurous here. There's really little room for the North Koreans that have a modest nuclear arsenal compared to ours. and could be wiped off the face of the map to be provocative. But there is a lot of room for them to be able to kind of try to get the president to back off, or to get him to kind of second guess himself. What the Russians are doing with these exquisite systems, that's what we refer to like these little tiny niche special things, they're almost irrelevant. He's announced 2 of them in the past 2 days. These are things that he actually talked about in 2018. There was a famous picture of, strikes on South Florida and Mar-a-Lago coming from the south, which is not the way things would normally happen, because it's just a long way to travel. So it's a nuclear warhead, but also nuclear powered missile that could just go on forever. So it's spewing radioactive like waste everywhere it travels over the course of its flight path. I mean, it's not a practical weapon. It doesn't really do anything with regards to the massive nuclear arsenals that the US and Russia has. We have enough to absorb our enemies' strikes and still respond. So that's why we have guaranteed mutually assured destruction. So these systems don't mean anything. A nuclear submarine, an unmanned nuclear submarine that has a nuclear warhead, doesn't really add anything to us, because we have nuclear submarines ourselves that could be deployed in this way. But it's a important kind of tool to just ratchet up the tensions, to try to get the U.S. to warn off the U.S. And Trump's kind of being baited by this, because his response was, well, we're now going to conduct nuclear tests, is actually stupid. It's stupid because these things should be irrelevant. We have a functional nuclear triad, air, land, and sea, that could defend us, that deters our adversaries. We don't need to be engaging in nuclear tests and starting an arms race that will get others to test nuclear weapons that are going to create.
Can I just ask you to break that? We don't need to test it because we know it works, right?
Exactly right. But it's also, if we start to go down this road, then we're talking about like nuclear exercises that will have nuclear fallout over different parts of the world and affect the populations. I mean, it's unnecessary for deterrence. We have a functional nuclear triad. He's just, because he doesn't understand these issues. He thinks he needs to respond to like these announcements. He doesn't. He could just say something as simple as "we're ready," and nobody wins in a nuclear war, and then otherwise be dismissive and not respond. But he's not a sophisticated actor.
It's like a giant game of my dad can beat up your dad. I mean, it's kind of it, right? And I want to come back to Ukraine in the next segment here quickly, but let's move over to Venezuela, which is also, a top priority. We can't move past it. There seem to be striking boats every 24 hours or so, and publicizing the shit out of them. They said they'll do strikes on Venezuelan soil. They've said they potentially put boots on the ground. I would assume there are already intelligence assets on the ground or in the area. We'll find out, I'm sure, from some breaking news in the next couple of years. I think folks forget that the New York Times reported a couple months ago that in 2019, there was a Navy SEAL operation in North Korea. That was revealed, and everybody kind of breezed past that, but that happened. Alex, I think the number one story is that Donald Trump can do whatever he wants with the most powerful military on the planet, and nobody and nothing has been able to stop him. I think this is the latest example. What do you think is not being understood? And maybe more importantly, Rand Paul is speaking out. Democrats are kind of doing what they often do, which is speak out, but don't effectively stop him. What can stop this? And what should people be thinking about to stop this, or force hard questions and get Congress, most importantly, to do their job?
Yeah. So I believe these are illegal acts. I believe these are murders of people that we don't know whether they're part of narco trafficking or being human trafficked. There is no due process to this. So I think these are legal. They're also
illegal, right? Yeah.
Illegal. Yes. I also believe that he's acting absent the authorization of the use of military force, which is a requirement that he's supposed to go to Congress and make his case, explain what his objectives are, what is the strategy, what is the end game. Is he just going after, trying to warn off narco traffickers from using that route to smuggle, fentanyl, whatever he claims is on him, into the U.S.? Is he going after trying to destroy the cartels? Is he going after regime change? He's supposed to do that to Congress and make his case. And then if he does that successfully, then he gets a resolution in support of his decisions. He's not doing that. So it's actually a constitutional crisis that he's flaunting his obligations. There is some tenuous.
So what do we do? And I think that's really important. You've been framing that up. I've been framing that up. But who has a plan to do something about it? Like even you saying it's illegal, I think is kind of cracking a seal, right?
Yeah.
I've said this on MSNBC the other day. I think Wes Moore is the only one that's kind of floated that it might be legal. I haven't heard a policymaker say we view this as illegal.
Yeah.
That's part of it, right? Is there getting to be more of a consensus that this might be illegal? But then what? Does it go to the courts? Does it go? What do you do to press the case that this is illegal? Where some, especially on the far left, I think somewhat ridiculously are saying, hey, troops, if you're on one of those boats, resist this illegal order.
Yeah.
But there has to be some kind of an actual decision by someone that it is an illegal order, right?
Yeah. So I think what I would want to, there's a question of like priorities. These strikes in a future Congress, in future oversight, need to be addressed. We need to understand what happened. And folks that executed illegal orders or gave illegal orders need to be held accountable. Frankly, what I'm most concerned about now is that because there's no accountability, because there's not enough of pushback from Congress, and certainly Trump has got control over the Republicans, their rubber stamps. The House hasn't been in session in weeks. He has free reign to potentially escalate this into a larger war. He is moving a carrier strike group from the Med into the Caribbean to conduct strikes. If these are airstrikes and kind of naval strikes, cruise missile strikes, or something of that nature, that is deeply problematic and destabilizing. It's going to probably create a flood it's going to create a backlash. We'll break with some of our allies. It will be interesting to see what kind of Colombia and Brazil do. We don't want to alienate the entire, Latin American sphere and potentially end up in a very, very difficult situation in our own hemisphere. But I think that we may be even on the cusp of a quick ramp up to a ground force invasion. We have a relatively modest presence now, 10,000 troops. It could be 25,000 troops if you deploy the 82nd Airborne and some Marine Expeditionary Forces. And that would be a foolish thing to do, because
it could be Bay of Pigs. It could be Panama, right?
It's a large country. Venezuela is like twice the size of California. It's like, it's Texas and Oklahoma from what I've seen people report just on sizes. That is a large amount of territory. 25,000 troops is not going to do anything. And we could be easily bogged down, even if the actual government goes into hiding with regards to guerrilla warfare, insurgencies, and would be another forever war. I don't think he's got the stomach for that. He likes quick and easy. He's doing a lot of bluffing, but you don't want to bluff your way into this situation either, because you're not going to get regime change through bluffing. That just doesn't happen. So I am concerned about where this leads. And the thing that we probably need to do is we need to help better inform Congress, especially the military folks that have some understanding, but there's just so many different crises. Millions of Americans are losing their access to food, and the military is not getting paid. There are so many different crises. Where do you focus your energy? I think this is one of those things that we should be making the case on, that we do not need to be involved in another forever war. Congress has to step in and hold the president accountable, make sure we don't stumble into a situation that we can't easily extract ourselves from.
I think you're right. I've been very critical of the Democrats, and one of the things I've been critical about is they haven't prioritized effectively and picked their spots. Yeah. Right? I frankly think the shutdown is a bad fight. I've talked about that. I don't think over time they're going to win this narrative. I don't think it's going to help their brand. I don't think it's going to help Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey. I don't think it's going to help in the midterms. I think they've got limited powder. They've got a lack of coordination, a lack of strategic leadership, and they need to pick their spots. And I think Venezuela is a good one to pick because it's a constitutional issue, because you've got Republicans like Rand Paul and now others like Tom Tillis. That seems like a good, important, and even potentially winnable national argument for them. But let's number one, I want to remind everybody we are daily now. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. Share us far and wide. We're going to continue to bring you important conversations that add light to contrast the heat, like Colonel Vindman. And we want to shift to the last segment here, covering pretty much the whole globe here. There are still issues that are under the radar. And normally this is one that's under the radar that most folks don't know about or forget is under the radar. This one shouldn't be under the radar, but it is, and that's Ukraine. You are an expert on Ukraine. You know Ukraine. Everybody, I think, in the country sometimes gets a little lulled on Ukraine, but every day Ukrainians are dying and fighting in defense of freedom. You know, you've been supportive of our efforts with American Veterans for Ukraine. You've been one of the most important voices. Can I ask you to do, and I don't mean this dismissively, like a scoreboard check?
Yep.
Where are we? Where is Ukraine? Where is Russia from a military standpoint? There's a
Sure.
lot of discussion about what territory should be given away, and Trump and Zelensky and Putin dominate the conversation. But meanwhile, there's a ground war going on.
Yeah.
Can you give us your assessment of where the ground war is right now?
Sure. One alibi on the shutdown and the healthcare issue. This is your show, but I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think what I see is this is the loss of healthcare, or the inability, or the massive increases in healthcare, I think might be a winning issue for the Democrats. It is, we're not talking about small numbers. We're talking about millions of people being affected by this, and getting the Trump administration to wheel back on some of its most damaging decisions with the big ugly budget bill, I don't think is a losing fight. And it's closer to home than even in Venezuela. I think the reason that people are jumping into Venezuela is because it seems a little bit remote. It's a foreign policy issue rather than a domestic issue. But
I think, can I say to you though, I think we can, we can agree on some of this. Like, I think
yeah,
it's a good fight. I think it's
yeah,
a right fight, but they
yeah,
are so crippled right now in their ability to fight. I don't think it's one they can win.
yeah,
Most importantly, because they can't win the narrative. And it's like I've brought this up a couple times in the show. Who's the fighter you're sending into the ring? Over
yeah,
here, you got Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth that are flooding the airwaves, and they've got Dana White and Tucker Carlson and Fox News. And over here, you got Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and MSNBC, and they're
yeah.
just getting smoked. I think the argument is salient and important about healthcare. I just don't know if they'll be able to make it effectively. And
I
that's
got
been
you.
my criticism on the Democrats a lot,
Makes sense.
I mean,
Um,
I say this a lot. I wish Barack Obama would come off the
yeah,
bench. Get
or
Barack
they could,
Obama out there making
yeah,
that case to the whole country, and then maybe you got a shot at putting Trump on his heels. But right now, I think
absolutely,
he's going to blame, when November 1st comes and troops don't get paid, he's going
yeah,
to blame it on the Democrats, and a lot
yeah.
of the country is going to buy it.
Mm. We'll see. I hope that's not the case. With regards to Ukraine, we had so much territory to cover, but with regards
Yeah,
to Ukraine,
please.
look, I think that the fundamental issue is that the Russians have not been able to cobble together an offensive this year. Lots of noise about, X 100,000 troops here. They have not been successful. Anytime they do anything like, even a modest operation, we're talking about, a couple thousand troops, they just get obliterated. Their singular successful tactic is employing UAVs, just like the Ukrainians have. The battlefield's transparent, to help maybe make some tiny advances and to punish the Ukrainians, and then use operational and strategic UAVs to punish and cruise missiles to punish Ukraine's critical infrastructure as well as terrorize the population. In doing this, they're able to take small tracts of land. Ukraine is successfully trading space for time, which is a good strategy for them, punishing the Ukrainian, the Russians. And the question is, who has more staying power? Yes, it's oppressive on the Ukrainian population. They are suffering. They're taking losses. But the strange thing is that this is actually not getting a buckling effect with regard to the population willing to trade away its sovereignty. There is not that kind of call to negotiate and give away territory and really kind of um, capitulate, really give away everything that Russia wants, like regime change, territory. That's the amazing part, is that it's a testament to the Ukrainians, and it's a testament to the human spirit. This desire for freedom and independence, and to call your own shots, even under enormous pressure. So
Mm,
I think the fact is the Ukrainians have more staying power than the Russians. The problem
mm,
is that Trump has been such a gift to Putin that he's inspired Putin to, even under pressure, with a economy that's groaning under stress, like really stretch them. There's not too many tools in Russia's arsenal to kind of weather any additional shocks. And absent any successes on the military front, that it's still incentivizing him to continue on, because Trump is a chaos agent. In chaos, there's are opportunities for Putin, and he wants to see how things play out over the course of another even difficult year. There have been tiny positive developments. We've sanctioned Lukoil and Rosneft, which are sources of Russia's budgetary revenue that they need to kind of operate the country and sustain a war effort. But these need to be much bigger. They need to be what were called blocking sanctions on Russian oil and gas. I think the Europeans are prepared for that shock. I think the problem is that we don't want to absorb higher oil prices and energy prices, even if it's for a short term. And the president could make the case why we need to do this and pressure Russia. At the same time, arming Ukraine to be more successful. If we did this in a coherent manner with a strategy in mind, not like, bend over for Russia and put pressure on Ukraine. If we did this with a strategy in mind, we could have found ourselves in a situation where Russia was looking to end this war, sooner, maybe even this time this year. Instead, we're kind of incentivizing them to push on. So that's really the fundamental story here.
That's a great breakdown. I appreciate that so much, and I hope you'll come back often and give us updates in exactly that way, because you have a great way of clarifying and simplifying it. We've been making Zelensky play Mother May I for way too long, back to when Biden was president. We need to give them everything they need to win. The sanctions bill needs to come. We need to put the hammer down. Let me ask you one question, if I can, quickly, and I know you've got to go soon. Why doesn't Zelensky and Ukraine hit Russia inside Russia more often? I'm stunned. Like, if we were in a war like this, I don't think we could stop all our buddies who were vets from going across the line into Canada to blow up Montreal and Toronto. I mean, the sheer discipline of holding your people back is kind of stunning for me. But as a strategist, or even from what why I feel like they're still demonstrating tremendous self-restraint, maybe more than would be accepted in the world in this time. But why isn't Zelensky taking shots in Ukraine, in Russia more often, in Moscow, to damage him internally and to remove that public support and hit him where it hurts?
The fundamental problem for Ukraine striking inside Russia is that it's a authoritarian regime. There's a strongman with access to hundreds of thousands of National Guard troops, a very, very advanced law enforcement, intelligence, domestic policing enterprise. So they do pretty spectacular things, like they did with those drones on the strategic bombers. They go after targets. They've done some assassinations. But this is not a permissive environment for them. And they have a limited amount of assets, and they need to apply them in the most strategic manner possible. Right now, they're choosing to go after military infrastructure and enabling infrastructure like oil and gas production facilities that could really start to kind of hammer home that this is an issue for the Russians. I mean, we're talking about a 20%, some people say 30% hit on Russia's ability to manufacture gasoline, and that is creating lines in kind of the east and central portion of Russia, Siberia. So I think they're being strategic and trying to focus on the fight. Unfortunately, they're kind of tethered a little bit to the capabilities they have at hand. If the U.S. provided Tomahawks, that would be, months down the road, they would be able to absolutely obliterate this facility that's producing thousands of these drones that have been going after Ukrainian infrastructure cities. But we haven't given them those kinds of resources, so they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Thank you for that. I think one day, as the history books are written, the military and strategic discipline of Ukraine will be awe-inspiring. When we find out exactly how precise and disciplined and focused they've been for so long, it may be one of the greatest military accomplishments of the modern time. Alex, I've got to let you go, but before we do, one thing, this is a lot of heavy shit, right? And it's a lot of really important shit, but we also need to add some light from time to time. We like to end each show with something good.
Something good. Oh, something sweet. Feel the fire, feel the heat.
I'm going to lead off and just say tomorrow is Halloween, and I want to recommend folks do something really, really basic. put a sign up and give out candy. Open up your house and your home at a time when people are closing the doors, when people are shooting each other in the streets. Halloween is actually a uniquely unifying American experience where almost everybody of all religions and backgrounds, with a couple of exceptions, participates. And it's about the kids. So I want to encourage everybody, even if you haven't done it in a while, throw on a hat, open the door, and give out some candy to the kids and be a part of what is one of the rare remaining shared American experiences. And that's Halloween. I think that's something good. Alex, over to you, sir. What's something good?
So, first of all, second year Halloween, my daughter's favorite holiday is Halloween. It's something we'd like to do together, watch scary movies together. She's a 14-and-a-half-year-old, so that may be one of the few times that she'll still be willing to kind of snuggle, although, not so much anymore. So look, I think the community component to me is always going to be a source of kind of strength and optimism. If we look around our communities, even under stress, it's to me where you could get clarity over issues, how hard things are, how good people are. Your neighbors want to have, a nice community, safe for the children. I think that's a source of strength. The other thing I'd mention is a couple weeks ago, I participated in 2 different protests. I wanted to get double counted for the No Kings protest. So I kicked off the Miami protest and then went quickly to Fort Lauderdale and gave some remarks there. One of the highlights was at the end of my remarks, I said, Mar-a-Lago is not far away from me. So I was like, hey, Donald Trump, you want to know what democracy sounds like? And I started a USA chant with a bunch of veterans standing around me and thousands of people chanting USA. And I think there is, that's supposed to be like anti-establishment folks, but they're still highly patriotic. I think that's the uniting feature for a lot of Americans. They just see the world a little bit differently, different lens. But it's this country, it's our communities and things of that nature. And we tend to do a lot of navel gazing about how bad things are because of scary news and stuff like that. But go back to your communities and you'll get a different look at how things are.
Thank you for that. You are a light. You continue to be an inspiration, a role model. You and your brother are, the American dream personified. You're true patriots. You put yourself and your family at great risk, not just when you were in uniform, but especially since. Alex, I thank you and I celebrate your leadership and especially as a role model for our children. And I'm so glad you can join us. I encourage everybody, follow Alex, look for him on television, read everything he writes, support his causes. Tomorrow, we will have another installment of Football Friday. We will have Congressman Ro Khanna will be here to talk about the latest news and give us his football picks. Next week, we got Sebastian Younger coming up. Next week, Jim Vanderhey of Axios will be there. Joy Taylor, our sports friend, will be joining us, and a lot of other great guests will be coming up in the days to come. In the meantime, we are daily. Go to independentamericans.us. Hit that subscribe button now. Help us continue to challenge the status quo, to ask people to stay vigilant. And no, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all united in our vigilance, and we're all in this together, especially tomorrow on Halloween. So in advance of Halloween, happy Halloween. My thanks to our dear friend, Colonel Dr. Alex Vindman. And until next time, I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Stay vigilant, America.
Powered by Righteous Media.